seat. My name is Marilyn Clark. Today, um, we're being sponsored by Clark Consulting Group. It is a consultancy that develops your people to grow the business. My guest today is Justin Atherton. Correct, Justin?
Yes,
Did I
ma'am.
say it right?
Yeah,
Okay, Atherton. All right. And we're going to talk today about um, how to interrogate yourself, which I thought was a very interesting topic for a podcast. So, Justin, I'm going to ask you to tell us a little bit about your background before we jump into our discussion.
sure. So, as someone who's been in law enforcement for nearly 2 decades,
Hmm.
um, I've had to make decisions under extreme pressure and being in leadership roles, whether it was on the SWAT team, being a detective, those high stakes environments always, figure out who's really leading. And I've been teaching leadership and interview interrogation courses for the last 8 years, and I've turned it into where now I'm doing speaking engagements, I'm doing executive coaching because I see how all of these tools that I've learned in my career in law enforcement, transfer into the civilian side of things, being an executive, being a leader. And
Hmm.
so that's what I'm focusing on now is turning all of these tools that I've learned in my law enforcement career, like you said, the self-interrogation. That's one of the aspects, and turning these tools into useful aspects for CEOs, leaders, business owners.
Hmm. Okay. Um, well, I do have some things that I wanted us to discuss today. I know you said you're a speaker and you do TEDx talks, correct?
Yeah, I did a TEDx talks last year.
Okay, okay. And so I wanted to ask you, the title was The Suspect Within, Learning to Interrogate Yourself. So I watched it. I thought it was really good. I really
Thank you.
enjoyed it.
Thank you.
Um, and I encourage folks out there to, check you out with that. But one of the leading questions why it made it so interesting was what does it mean to interrogate yourself,
Mm.
and why is this so important for leaders? So let's talk
Sure.
about that.
Yeah. So the self-interrogation. So where this comes from
Hmm.
is a tool I use as a detective called content analysis. So within the law enforcement world, this is used to determine the truthfulness or accuracy of written and spoken word. But I had a personal revelation with it that I could use this on myself. And so that's where I came up with this idea of self-interrogation. I was like, well, wait a minute. Like, if I'm lying to myself and I saw it firsthand,
Hmm.
I'm not the only one out there doing this because I was trained on this. I taught people how to use this tool. And I'm like, if I saw the self-deception in myself, hey, everyone else out there is doing it as well. So I turned it into a tool and really focused in on auditing our language, like understanding the words that we use that undermine us as leaders, as parents, whatever aspect that we're in, and asking ourselves the good questions, especially in the leadership roles, like, am I being clear? What are my blind spots? What am I missing here? Rather than just assuming that our teams understand what we're saying, it's really asking ourselves the tough questions like, do I really want this? If I say, oh, I plan to eat better from now on. So I'm already using undermining language. So do I really want that? Is that a goal that I really want to accomplish? And then once you say yes, if this is a goal that I want, realize, okay, I can't say I'm going to plan to do this or try to do this. I have to speak with clear language saying I will do this or I am going to do this. So that's where that self-interrogation comes from. It's really
Okay.
about discovering your blind spots because we
Hmm.
create these barriers for ourselves that we don't even realize that we need to have some self-awareness around to be able to remove that.
Right, right. Okay. I work a lot with self-awareness too and competencies and when it comes to leaders. But I think that's in those quiet moments, leaders in those quiet moments when they're self-reflecting. Maybe it's
Hmm.
something professional, but then also when it could be something personal in their
Yeah.
personal life that they're reflecting on. We all know we do it. We all
Yes.
know that we sometimes, we'll say something about what I'm going to do this. New Year's resolutions, I guess, is a good example. We all going to have one of those. I don't even do those anymore because it's like it doesn't make sense. Why I got to wait till then? It's not probably going to work out. But in some little aspect, and I guess in our professional life, when we're thinking about it, it's the same kind of concept. Why do we say that? Why do we make it interrogate ourselves for in that way to say?
Sure.
So, um, I know that you had developed a model
Hmm.
called the wave, and the wave meant words, awareness, verify, and engage.
Yes.
So, can you break that down, that wave method for us, and share how leaders can use it to improve their communication and decision making?
Sure. So this is really the awareness piece behind the language that we use. So like you said, the wave method is about the words, the awareness, verify, and engagement. So the first piece is understanding the words that we use that undermine us. And within that same model of content analysis, I narrowed it down to three different categories of words, which are stop action verbs, absolutes, and equivocations. So the most important category of those three, I believe, is the stop action verbs. So those are words like try, started, plan to, meant to, want to, need to, love to. And I joke about it here in the South. We say fixin' to. That is another one. And those words they imply a level of failure. And I
Wow.
don't think most people realize if I say, "Yeah, I'm going to try to go to the gym today." You're telling your subconscious, well, it's all right if we don't make it, right? Or, I'm gonna plan to eat better from now on. It's like, well, you can make a plan, but are you going to do it or not?
Hmm.
And I've had people come up to me before and say, well, Justin, is it really a big deal to use these words? Everyone says try or plan to or want to. And the challenge that I give to people is, all right, if you don't think it's a big deal to use these words, walk up to your spouse and say, I'll try to be faithful to you. Or I plan to be faithful to you. Or meant to. We're getting worse now, right?
Yeah,
So it's
I meant it.
um, if we don't expect failure with those statements, why do we use that with our own goals and accomplishments, right? Like the only way people expect to hear that is I will be faithful, or I am going to be faithful to
Hmm.
you. And so when we talk about our own goals and dreams and aspirations, why wouldn't we talk to ourselves in the same way? I will do this.
Hmm.
I am going to achieve that goal. Yeah, so think about this from a leadership standpoint
Hmm.
is, our team hears all of those undermining words when we tell them what we're going to try to do. Yeah, well, I'll plan, we're going to make a plan to work on this project, or I'll try to get that finished by Friday, right? Like our teams hear this. They hear that undermining language, and it erodes that level of trust that is important in a leadership role. And so it's very important for us to pay attention to the words that we use so we're not undermining ourselves with the people around us, especially with those in a leadership role. So once we understand the words that we need to use, it's
Hmm.
about creating the awareness behind it. And so you have to be able to interrupt those phrases when they come out in the moment,
Hmm.
right? So if I say, "Yeah, I'll try to get that done," no, I will have that done by Friday.
Hmm.
You literally have to catch yourself in the moment because I really like Jim Quick. He talks a lot about the brain science and how the
Hmm.
subconscious is always listening to us, right?
Hmm.
So if we're giving ourselves that undermining beliefs, I'll try, I'll plan, I want to, our subconscious is always listening. And so we have to tell it exactly what we expect to accomplish. And so we have to stop ourselves from even finishing the sentence and say, no, I will do this. I am going to do that.
Hmm.
So that's really the awareness piece of this. And the verify, that's more along the lines of when we send text messages or emails, because think about it in the workplace, we send a lot more emails than we do face-to-face conversations nowadays, right? A lot of electronic,
Hmm.
communication. How often does our undermining language show up in our texts, in our emails? And so we have to go through and audit those and verify that I'm being very clear when I send out a direction, via text or email. I will especially if it's an email that's going to a lot of people,
Hmm.
I reread that thing about 6 or 7 times. I'm
Hmm.
like, let me make sure. Let me go through here. Am I being very clear? Can I be misunderstood in any way? Am I using any of this undermining language? So that's the verify aspect. And the last piece, the engagement, if you don't have someone to help point this out, it becomes a lot more difficult to have that self-awareness for yourself. So I I tell people to share this with a coworker that they trust, or maybe it's your spouse. Like, hey, I want to remove these words from my vocabulary. Can you help me do this? Point it out to me when you
Hmm.
hear me say try or started or plan to or
Hmm.
maybe or kind of.
Hmm.
And they might even join you. And they
Yeah.
might even think it's fun, right? To do that. But having that accountability partner to really hold you to that language, that's going to expedite your success in using the wave method.
Okay. Yeah, I can, some of these things that what you just talked about and explaining that, I was just thinking about how I kind of operate, or have had other people operate around me. And I, people always say I'm very, I don't know, not blunt, but just kind of truthful. For me, it is or it isn't.
Hmm.
I wishy-washy never worked for me.
I agree. I
It,
agree.
it just kind of never worked for me. I don't know. Sometimes that got me in trouble, because I wasn't wishy-washy about things.
Well, some people think it's being rude when you're to the
Yeah,
point.
right.
And I think that we've created this weird thing in society to where we have to be, like you said, that wishy-washy because we don't want to hurt somebody's feelings. Well, that's just being matter of fact.
Hmm.
It's not being, curt or, rude. It's just this is what it is.
Hmm. Hmm. Right. So in those aspects and the words that you use, and that subconscious, I've done some reading on that too, how your subconscious and neural brain and all of that stuff.
Hmm.
And I can see that, especially when it comes to something simple like the gym. I'll try and go to the gym instead of saying, I'm going to the gym today.
Yeah.
I'm I'm gonna make that, I'm gonna make that a point that come, and I'm going to make sure I fit that into my day,
Yeah.
regardless of whatever comes through,
What changes
whatever.
how you behave when you
Yeah,
talk to yourself that way? Like I feel a difference when I change that. Like I might
yeah,
get up in the morning and say, "Yeah, I'm gonna try to go." No, I will go. And then my
hmm,
brain says, "All right, we are going. It's
yeah,
gonna happen," and like no excuses get in the way.
hmm, hmm. Um, Now you you have an upcoming book. You've written a book.
Yes, ma'am.
Congratulations on that. When's it coming
Thank
out?
you.
You
It's
know?
gonna end up being in next year.
Okay.
I'm still having some meetings with the editor about
Right.
it. We're doing the final run through right now with
Well,
it. So,
good, good, good for you. I'm working on a book too, but I'm nowhere near where you are at the end, but I know how that editing piece goes. Even when I try to write some little revisions, that part really
sure.
just cringes me. So I get what you're saying. But the name of your book, it's a catchy title. It's called How to Get to the Damn Point.
Hmm. Just like what we were talking
Yeah.
about. Like people think it's rude to get to the damn point,
Get to
right?
the damn point. So let's talk about what inspired you. First, I want to know what inspired you to write it. but also what inspired you to give it that title?
Mm,
And
sure.
um, and also, what's one common mistake that leaders make in communication that you think this book can help them with?
So I wrote this book because I was tired of seeing leaders lose their credibility
Hmm.
when they're rambling, when they're over explaining, when they can't get to the point. Because I've been in too many meetings where I've sat there and listened to people talk, and some people think that more words equals more credibility, right? And we've
Yeah.
all been in those meetings where it's like, this could have been an email. Like,
Right.
why are we sitting here for 7 hours having this meeting that could have been done in an hour,
Hmm.
right? And so, but I think it's contagious. I think that people get into these leadership roles and they think this is how leaders talk. They explain something and then they re-explain it and they re-explain it again, and it's like, we heard it the first time. We agreed with you the first time. Why are we still talking about it?
Hmm.
And what's funny is the actual trigger for it, because I've been writing this in my head for several years, because I've been in leadership roles for probably nearly a decade. And I was I was in the car with my daughter, and my former boss was on the phone with me,
Hmm.
and she was listening to the call because it was on speaker in my truck. At the end of this conversation, my daughter, who was 14, said, "Daddy, that was the most inefficient conversation I've ever heard." She's like, "When are you going to quit?" I said, "I'm working on it." And so that that was the catalyst for me. I'm
Hmm.
like, if my 14-year-old daughter realized that she heard this inefficient conversation of
Uh-huh.
this, person in a leadership role rambling on about nothing for, 30, 40 minutes while we're sitting in the truck, that I'm like, I need to write this down and I need to get it out. And so within a very short amount of time, I had finished writing the book. So my daughter was a big catalyst for that, for,
Okay.
for getting
Okay.
it finished. I would say one of the biggest, tools that I share in the book that leaders can take away is the 10-word rule.
Hmm.
If you can clarify your point in about 10 words, then you really understand what your point is.
Okay.
Because most people, they get 30 seconds in, like few minutes in, before they even get to their point. It's like, what are we even talking about? They lead with all this backstory. Well, last week we were trying to, accomplish this goal, but remember last quarter when we were, had that meeting about this? Like, hang on, what are we even talking about? We can give some context, that's fine, but
Hmm.
let's get to our point first. Like, hey, right now this meeting is about Project X. That is the point, right? Like, that's what we're talking about. Now we understand what we're going to have a conversation about. And the book, because I've sent it to some people to read, and the feedback I've gotten on it is, well, it doesn't have anything in there about decision making or collaboration. I'm like, that's not what this book is about. It's pre-decision or post-decision,
Hmm.
right? It is important to have the brainstorming sessions, to have the collaboration meetings, but you have to get to the point first to be able to have that meeting. And then
Hmm.
once a decision is made, you have to get to the point again on how to implement that.
Hmm.
And so this is not how to make decisions. This is how to get to the point before you've made a decision or after you've made a decision.
Hmm. Okay. Okay. I like it. So it's coming out in 26.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Well, I'm going to be sure to look for it next year. Maybe shoot me an email
Definitely.
and I'll
I
put a shout
definitely
out on it. Okay. Because I really decide how to get to the damn point. I like that. Um, okay. So you did talk about your career in law enforcement and you also were in SWAT leadership.
Hmm.
I think that's highly commendable. So how did, and I know we kind of know what SWAT does. I
Hmm.
mean, I know it's not as how it looks on the TV shows, but
Sure.
we kind of know what when they call the SWAT team, what that kind of means. I think people know what that kind of means, that it's something that's really, really serious. So how did those high stress experiences when you were in SWAT leadership
Mhm.
shape the way you now train and coach leaders in the corporate world?
Sure. I think the biggest takeaway that I got from being on the SWAT team and having
Mhm.
to train on a regular basis was that we never rise to the occasion. We always fall to our lowest level of training.
Okay, explain that.
So most people think, oh yeah, I know how to do this. And when the moment comes, I'll step up and I'll be able to accomplish that. And that is never the case. We always revert to our lowest level of training. And when I've taught law enforcement officers, brand new police officers or brand new officers on the SWAT team, we always revert to what our minimum amount of training is. That's why it's so important to practice these different skill sets, not just in law enforcement, but in leadership, in the corporate world, in cooking, in being a parent.
Mhm.
It's every aspect. If we don't practice the skill sets that we want to be proficient at on a regular basis, we're not going to be able to flip that light switch and go, oh, now I'm going to turn it on. Now I'm going to, learn how to have a good conversation. Now I'm going to learn how to, in that moment, I'm going to be a good parent. It's like you have to do all of these things all the time. It has to be ingrained into who you are. So one of the ways that I practice my communication or rapport building skills. Because from being a detective, a lot of it is about being building trust and rapport with another person.
Mhm.
And so my wife gives me crap because she knows anytime we get into an Uber, I'm going to know that Uber driver's life story before we get to our destination, right?
Okay.
And to me, that's me practicing the skill set.
Okay.
That's just not me doing it just because to me, I'm like, it doesn't really matter to me. I'm never going to see this person again. But for me, it's practicing a skill set that has become ingrained into who I am.
Mhm.
And so that's what I've seen in these different high stress environments is that most people revert to their old habits. So unless you have created like this crisis proof leadership plan for yourself to where it's like, I know what I'm going to do when the stress it hits me
Mhm.
because I have repeated that behavior in the
Mhm.
non-stress moments.
Mhm.
So that, to me, that's the biggest takeaway.
Okay. Okay. Um, Based on that, that kind of flows into emotional intelligence,
Hmm.
and that often gets over emotional intelligence often gets overlooked in high pressure environments. I think it's very for me, I think it's one of the what I call self-awareness skills that's kind of paramount in
Yes.
understanding that. How can leaders use emotional intelligence as a tactical advantage when making decisions or leading teams?
Hmm. So most people don't think about, how much emotions impact our decision making, our
Mm-hmm.
problem solving, or relationship building.
Mm-hmm.
And so I actually, um, I've been teaching emotional intelligence classes to law enforcement for the last 8 years. And when I first started doing this, and I'd get into a room full of police officers and say, today we're going to talk about emotions. They would look at me like, you're in the wrong room. You need to go down the hallway. You need to make a right and you need to keep on going. Right. Because talking about emotions or emotional
And
intelligence in policing about a decade ago
yeah,
wasn't the
feelings. Yeah.
wasn't the norm.
Yeah.
Right. It's
Right.
gotten better. It's
Right.
gotten better over the
Okay.
years, but it's still not a norm to talk about.
Mm-hmm.
And so today, I actually taught one yesterday. I continue to teach classes on emotional intelligence and
Mhm,
emotional regulation because we talk about emotional intelligence as being only a piece of the pie. So
mhm,
there's emotional intelligence, there's emotional literacy,
mhm,
emotional agility, and emotional resilience. And
mhm,
all four of those come together to build on your emotional regulation, which is your ability to choose the most appropriate emotion in the moment.
mhm. Okay.
And so for leaders, this is huge.
Yeah.
Think about how often we go into a meeting with this preconceived notion of like, oh, I know how this meeting's going to go. This guy's going to frustrate me. I'm going to, end up, upset at the end of this meeting. And guess what? And it happens because we brought that into the room
Hmm.
rather than preemptively going into a meeting with a level of optimism and curiosity
Hmm.
and going, hey, I know the last meeting I had with this person wasn't great, but I know this is a different scenario. We're going to approach it in a different way.
Hmm.
And to me, my favorite emotion to operate from as a leader is curiosity
Hmm.
because it is impossible or very difficult to be curious and angry. Because if someone is being abrasive with you, they're maybe they're even yelling at you or they're getting irate. If you're in your head going, I wonder what's going on with this, or what's causing this in them. Did they have a bad day? Did they not get enough sleep? Do they are they just they don't like me? Who knows? If you're in the curious mode,
Hmm.
it diffuses the potential for anger.
Hmm. Okay.
And so it's really a fun game to choose the right emotions for the right moment. There's a great quote by Aristotle that says it's easy to be angry, but to be angry with the right person and to the right degree in the right moment, in the right context, and at the right time,
Mhm.
that's not easy. And that's not in everybody's power. And you could plug in any emotion into that, right? It's easy to be curious, but to be curious with the right person in the right moment, in the right time, in the right context.
Mhm.
And so the emotional intelligence is a piece of the pie of that emotional regulation. And for leaders, it's paramount in the top three things that we have to do: decision making, problem solving, and relationship building.
Yeah. It takes practice.
It does.
That's
It's
it.
not an easy thing. It's
It's
not
not.
easy.
Right. I will attest to that, that takes practice. I think about leaders, I can think about myself and, situations. It may not be even a business situation. It just could be, out doing something.
Hmm.
And how that emotional intelligence, it's how you think, how you can let yourself go into that zone of, it's
Hmm.
self-awareness. You have to understand
Yes.
that you are in that zone in order to pivot or change or deflect or whatever it is you got to do. But
Hmm.
you got to recognize it.